have a problem. You see, I have a lot of books, and I have quite a few of them which I have read and weren't my favorite, as well as some that I just know I'm never gonna read and really don't care to have displayed on my bookshelves. And I'm not quite sure what to do with them. So I'm thinking, given the fact that I'm doing my TBR shelf challenge this year with the intent of figuring out the books that I want to find a new home for, that I was going to start tackling that this week and utilize the free little library system. I'm still torn on some of the books because I personally think that they shouldn't be read by anybody, and so I don't want to put them into a library system and have them fall into somebody's hands, because I don't want to encourage the beliefs that they share. But the particular stack I have right here is mostly harmless. It's just not my cup of tea. There are a few nonfiction that I think do teeter into the harmful category, but I will talk about that when I talk about the book. So we have 4 fiction books that I am thinking of exchanging and 3 nonfiction. For the fiction, I have 2 novels by Richard Paul Evans. These are by a Christian author, and I no longer subscribe to that religion. And honestly, I think he's kind of a subpar novelist. Neither of these stories are very interesting. They're very predictable. They're very like Nora Ephron rom-com kind of vibes. Like, they're just very simple stories, not very compelling characters. Honestly, I don't even remember much about the books, except the fact that this one has to do with a letter and this one has to do with a road, which obviously you can tell by the covers of the book. So I know, super compelling, exciting stuff. So we live in a neighborhood that has a bit of an older population, and a lot of the books in our free little library that we have right down the road are fiction books, and what I would also consider more simple fiction books, like very light, easy reads. You pick them up and you finish them in an afternoon. And so I think these books kind of fall right into that category. But like I said, there's no like overtly harmful messages in here. It's very like watered down Christianity kind of stuff. Not my interest anymore, but I think somebody else might enjoy them. The other 2 are by Thomas Kincaid, who is also a painter, and so I think he was the one who did the artwork for his book covers. They are set in Cape Light, which I think is a real town on the New England coastline. So beautiful views, right? And beautiful paintings. Again, these fall into that category of kind of like Christian sub-themes, very like traditional relationships, predictable storylines, nothing super compelling, easy reads. And I think both of them are part of a series which I think is significantly longer. I don't know, because I read these 2 and then dropped it because it just wasn't that interested in continuing. But I think they're probably decent options to put in a free little library. Okay, sip of coffee, and we move on to the potentially more controversial selections. Dave Ramsey. If you haven't heard of him, I don't know why you haven't heard of him. I feel like his name was ubiquitous in the circles that I was in growing up. I don't know if that's just because of where I live and the fact that I grew up in more religious and, more importantly, politically conservative, just conservative in general, households. So Dave Ramsey was a family name. My parents listened to his podcast a lot. This is where he is their financial guru, just in terms of the way that they learned to save and invest and treat credit and debt and investments in general, like this is the Bible for them when it comes to finances. Dave Ramsey's their God. If I remember correctly, I think I was gifted this as a teenager, around that time when I got my first job and was getting a steady paycheck and was starting to be able to buy things for myself on my own, license to a car, and like those initial glimmers of adult independence. And I was gifted this with a lot of that parental advice of save your money and here's how you become financially independent and follow all of the guides in here, don't have credit cards, pay in cash, pay in full, a mix of fine common sense advice with some other things that you're just like, yeah, it's very extreme, it has its extreme tendencies that you're not a bad person if you have credit cards. You're not a bad person if you have debt. There are reasonable ways and smart ways to have both of these things. And I don't need this book anymore. I don't know if anyone else will find it interesting. We'll see. Exchanging this book may also just depend on what else is in the free little library, because again, I'm not entirely sure how much they skew towards fiction. The one we have a couple houses down, I think definitely has more light fiction reading. The other one I'm thinking of going to, I think might be more child focused because it's in a neighborhood with a lot more school-aged children. And so I don't even know if any of these nonfiction books will be library appropriate. The next one I have, I won this in high school in an essay competition all about capitalism and how it is the greatest economic system ever. Woe is me. And I've never read the book. I have zero intentions of reading the book because it is the classic 2010s Republican position that big government is bad and we need free markets and we need entrepreneurs. All the stuff that the Republican Party, no longer believes in because they don't really believe in anything except screwing everybody else over. I don't think that this person has any good things to say. John Stossel is known for being a very abrasive person and likes to start arguments. And honestly, I'm just not interested in hearing his opinions on anything. So this book's gonna go. And then we have a book by the Howard Schultz of Starbucks. I'm not a Starbucks fan. I've never enjoyed their coffee. And the more that I have learned about their business practices and the fact that they have broken a lot of laws to try to not have their workers unionize, and that they treat their workers terribly and don't believe in minimum wage and giving people livable income and treating people like humans, I'm not interested in anything this man has to say either. I think he's going to be a classic cis white man who has very conservative ideas, very extremist ideas, and is all like, oh, I made my success myself, despite the fact that he is one of the most privileged members of American society and probably got a lot of help from everyone around him and was born in great circumstances and never had to fight for anything. I may be entirely wrong on some of those points, but something tells me that I'm probably not, because I read a lot of business, self-help, development, sales, entrepreneur type books from middle-aged white men, and they all tend to have the same exact stories to share, the same lessons to share, and the same vibes that are, generally speaking, not helpful to most of society. It's a lot of ego stroking, and I don't need to stroke anyone's ego. So this book is gone. And now, let's review the plan. Okay, crew, we have a game plan. Are you ready for this? Here's my really fancy playbook. Step 1, we're gonna select the books. We've already done this. I already talked to you about them, so that's done. Step 2, we gotta find some libraries. I have one in a couple houses down from me. There's one in the neighborhood that's like annexed to ours. So that means I just gotta find a third one, somewhere in driving distance. Step 3, we get to take a field trip. I'm gonna attempt to film these trips to the little free libraries. However, I question my confidence to film in public, so we'll see. I'm not gonna hold myself to any sort of elaborate filming operations, but I will try to get some discreet angles so that you can actually come along and see what's happening. Step 4, make the actual exchange. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Last but not least, we're gonna read the books. I know you're saying to yourself, Faith, you have this entire TBR shelf series going on. How on earth are you gonna read more on top of that? I don't know. I actually have a plan, okay, that's coming in another video the next month. And we're gonna get really cranking on the TBR shelves. The goal here is just to give myself some new stuff to read for about a week, okay? That means I may only get through one of the books that I exchange for, given the fact that I showed you, 7 books that are up for dibs on this little project. But we'll see. We'll have fun. We'll play it by ear. It's gonna be great. And with that, we're gonna go get ready for a field trip. I am back from my little library trips. I ended up going to 4 in total. Our town actually has quite a lot of them, but it was very difficult for me to locate where they were. I found that Google Maps gave me results that were different than the Free Little Library website, which was interesting and somewhat difficult to manage. That being said, I was able to find 4 of them that I visited and exchanged books. I did not end up getting as many books in return as I thought I might, which was a little disappointing, but probably makes me better off in the long run, because I definitely needed to get rid of books more than I needed to increase my library size and my TBR list. So the first one I went to is located within our section of our neighborhood, and I was pleasantly surprised by the selection there. It made me a little bit disappointed that I haven't been using it the whole time we've been living here, because there were quite a few books that piqued my interest. I ended up going with Colson Whitehead. He is someone who came up when I was reading the Heaven and Earth grocery store. And this book, particularly The Underground Railroad, is one that I put on my Goodreads list after I read James McBride. So I was quite excited to see that this was available in the library. I believe I exchanged the Thomas Kincaid books, the Cape Cod series, for this one in that library. The second library I visited, I was not surprised to find that most of it was children's books, and the rest of it was like the small paperback romance novels. I'm not particularly interested in that. No offense to people who enjoy that type of reading material. It's fun to read every so often, but not within the goals that I have for my reading this year. So I ended up just putting the 2 Richard Evans novels that I had into that library and not getting anything in return. The third library I went to was basically a bust. It was located right outside of a childcare center, and I anticipated because of that it would also be mostly full of kids' books. Ended up, when I opened it, that it was basically empty. I think it had maybe 4 like really thin pamphlets. It was almost what they looked like not even picture books or, kids' books in any way, shape, or form, just more like brochures. I had a couple of books with me that I didn't know whether or not to put them in there. I did go ahead and just exchange them. My understanding is, based off of some research, that there's a nonprofit group that works with the Free Little Libraries in this area and is in control of helping stock them and kind of rotate books through. So I felt better once I learned that about dropping those 2 books in the library, because they were just I think those were two of my nonfiction books, which felt very out of place in a library that was potentially geared more towards children. And then the last one that I just visited tonight at a local park. Again, a mix of kids' books and then a lot of Christian romance, like Amish romance, Western Christian romances, stuff like that. I kind of thought maybe I wouldn't end up with anything, but I did pick out this book called Think Twice, which looks to be a thriller, potentially. Yeah, it's an emotional thriller about identical twins. It seemed interesting enough, and I am kind of in a mood for thrillers right now. I wouldn't be shocked if I read this book and find that it's going to go into the pile to be exchanged back into the free little library system. But that's kind of what it exists for, right? Is to try out new books and give them back so others can read them. And that is it for my free little library book haul. All of 2 books, but I am excited to read them. I think they'll probably be part of my next video that I am doing for June in a massive reading challenge I am undertaking. But for now, thank you for watching. I hope you subscribe and follow along on my future book adventures, and I'll catch you in the next one.